Even if your electric bill back home seems normal, Merida Mexico will test you, physically and financially. This heat is relentless. The power costs are high, and if you heavily rely on air conditioning, that's a recipe for a shocking electric bill. Now, add in frequent blackouts, voltage spikes, the occasional hurricane, and suddenly you're sweating literally and financially. In this video, I'll break down how you can estimate your electric costs for any home, and I'll show you exactly what your electric bill might actually look like and how to set up a system that keeps you running even when the power goes out. Let's get it. One of the things you'll quickly come to realize living in Mexico is that electricity isn't cheap, and especially here in the Yucatan. Merida's rapid growth has outpaced the power grid, but a new plant is coming online in 2027. Until then, you can expect frequent blackouts, voltage spikes, which can fry your electronic devices, and a CFE bill that shoots up fast if you cross the allotted threshold tied to your tariff class. As a former state official once put it, the Yucatan doesn't have a power outage problem. Sometimes power shows up. There's a proposal right now to move the Yucatan from the 1C and 1D CFE tariff rates, which is the electric company here in Mexico, to 1F, like other places in the country with a similar climate like Sinaloa, Sonora, and Baja California. Now that shift could cut electric bills by up to 50% for thousands of residents here in the Yucatan. Other legislators are pushing for a temporary rate cut until the grid is stabilized in 2027. But the reality is this isn't just a problem for Merida and the state of Yucatan, this is a Mexico problem. The entire country of Mexico has already reached a level where it's tapping into its emergency energy reserves. So regardless of what tariff you're under, if you're moving to Mexico, understanding how to cut your electricity costs and having a backup power plan is essential. Electricity can easily become one of your largest household expenses here in Mexico if you're not careful with how you use it. Thanks to the hot and sunny weather here in Merida, solar panels seem like an obvious fix. And if I owned a home here in Mexico, there would be no question I'd install solar. But for renters here in Merida, Mexico, it's a bit more complicated. 4 years ago, I seriously considered adding solar panels to my last rental home. I almost dropped $12,000 on a solar system for the house, even though I didn't own it. The ROI for that solar system looked good on paper. It would have taken about 5 years to pay off those panels. But here's the twist. I walked away from buying that solar system at my last house, and I'm glad I did. At the time, I took on an exercise to figure out exactly how much electricity I use per month. So I ran the numbers, and I kept tracking my electric usage bill after bill. CFE can be in a bit of a mood. Once you cross that threshold for high usage, known as DAC, it flips from being a generous grandmother to a grumpy landlord trying to charge you triple for late rent. So here's why not buying solar for my last house ended up being the right move. My worst bill I ever received at that last house was about 14,000 pesos for a 2-month period, which equated to about $700 for that 2 months, so $350 per month. But I never hit the DAC rate. To enter the DAC rate, which is the high excessive use rate for the 1D tariff, you have to use over 1,000 kilowatts per month for 12 straight months. And once you enter DAC, your bill can double or even triple, and getting out of DAC is almost next to impossible. It's super tough. So imagine if I did hit DAC and my bill was already $700 US for the 2-month period. It could have doubled to $1,400 or $2,100 depending on the rate, because the rate jumps exponentially once you hit DAC. Now, how I managed to stay out of DAC and why I didn't end up buying solar panels at my previous home is that the house had 2 meters. One for the main house, which was on one street, and one for the casita, which was on a different street. But that allowed me to split my AC usage between the units that we use at night and the units that we use at day. And that's what helped me avoid DAC entirely. Over 4 years in my previous home, I paid 180,000 pesos, which is roughly around 9,500 USD in electricity, depending on the exchange rate for a particular year. We're talking 2021, 22, 23, and part of 2025. The solar system would have cost me $12,000 US up front in 2021. So yeah, I saved about $2,500 by skipping the solar system. So my new house has 6 solar panels already installed, and each generate about 230 watts per panel. Now, it's an older system, it's definitely a smaller system, but it helps offset some of the cost of the infrastructure of the house. This house has a bigger pool with filtration. I'll show you the pool in this video. It has a sprinkler system which I installed, which runs for about an hour every day. This house has a compressor-based water pressurized system, which means that the house is constantly under pressure. So anytime the pressure drops, the compressor kicks on, which can typically use a little more power compared to a booster system, which only comes on, say, a few seconds after the water has been running. We also have like 6 ACs, but 2 of those ACs are non-inverter style ACs that came with the home or that were already here installed in the home. The inverter ACs that I had back at my other house, I just actually put here in my storage room in case something fails. I can replace those with the non-inverter ACs with an inverter unit. Now, to better understand my usage, I brought in my electrician from my other house that helped me come up with the plan to split the meters and things of that nature. My electrician did a full energy audit of the systems of the house. I also had a solar tech come out and evaluate the system to make sure that it was functioning correctly, that it was generating as much as it could, given the age of the system. And one of the reasons, to be honest, that I chose this house was the amenity of having solar. So let's compare the old house with the new house and look at the numbers of my usage. We're gonna look at the current period, which was from May 20th to July 29th, in the old house and in the new house. In the old house, I used a combined 4,066 kilowatts for this same period last year from May 20th to July 29th, 2024. Now, I can tell you that last summer was way hotter than this summer. And in fact, by May 20th, during that period, we had something probably like, 35, 40 days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This summer, I don't think we've hit many days over 100. Maybe early May, we had 1 or 2 weeks where it was hot, but the rest of the summer has been absolutely chill, or has been much, much cooler, probably 10 to 15 degrees cooler than last year, it seemed. Last year was just super, super hot. So we used a lot of electricity. We used 4,666 kilowatts of electricity in that 2-month period. So that's just over an average of 2,000 kilowatts per month, which would have put us over DAC, right? Because DAC, you get 1,000 kilowatts per month. But again, it's a sustained usage over 12 months. For that one period, we used 4,666 kilowatts of electricity. 3,000 of that was used, almost 3,100 of that was from the main house and the units that were at night and all the other things that run in the main house, like our refrigerator and etc. And then the casita used almost 1,000 kilowatts. So we were running the air a lot in the casita as well last year. So in the other units downstairs, just trying to keep the house cool. The bill for that period was $556 US, which if you divide that by 2, that's our monthly expense. So that came out to about $226 per month. That was the old house. The new house that we're in, which does have solar, we generated 1,689 kilowatts, a significant difference. Again, a couple of factors for that is it has not been as hot as it was last year, nowhere near the amount of heat. And this house has solar, which generated 145 kilowatts, which isn't a lot. I mean, that's a very small, we're talking less than 10% of what I actually use. However, my bill for this current period is only $180 US, a huge savings. And that's with a small solar system here at my new house. And just to give you some comparison, the previous tenant used 1,160 kilowatts of energy for the same period last year in the new house. I don't think they used the pool, and they definitely didn't have a sprinkler system because I put the sprinkler system in when I moved in. So we're talking about 520 kilowatts more that my family used based on our habits and our AC unit usage and our lifestyle. In the new house, having less efficient ACs for 2 out of the 6 units and only 1 meter, and having a always on pressure system, our bill was 1/3 lower than at the previous house for the same time frame. So keep in mind that this is my first bill at the new house, and our actual cost might have been more we were not here for about 10 days of that period, we would have probably used 300 to 340 kilowatts more for the entire period. So even if I estimate it at 300 to 340 kilowatts more, that still puts us right at 2,000 kilowatts, which is still half of what the bill was at the previous house. We're currently using about 34 kilowatts per day in this house with all the systems running. And that's something I continue to track to make sure I understand when things are out of the ordinary. So that's a very important point, to understand what your normal usage is, so that when things go awry, like pumps are running too much, the compressor system's running too much, things of that nature, you understand exactly what's going on with your electric bill, because those things will have an impact on your electric bill. So solar is definitely a tool to help you manage the expense of electricity here. However, if you are renting and you have to buy a system, that's an initial outlay that you may or may not ever recover that money. I thought I was going to be at that house for a lot longer than 4 years, but as it turns out, 4 years was the right amount of time for us to be there, and our time was up. Definitely try to find a home with solar, which isn't going to be easy, because most people that have solar understand the value of a solar system. Even with solar, if the grid goes down, you still lose power at your home, because most solar systems here in Yucatan historically have not had a battery backup system. The battery backup systems in Yucatan have been just way too expensive for the batteries. They've been unreliable in this extreme heat and humidity. Batteries fail in your remote controls for your AC units and your televisions quite frequently. That's one of the things, batteries and tires, you will be buying a lot of here in the Yucatan, and both for your house and for your car if it's battery technology. So battery technology here just doesn't do well with the humidity and the heat. And it's historically not been worth it to put it on your house, because in a few years those batteries are going to be dead, they're expensive to replace, etc. And the technology just wasn't there. But that's changing. There are now several companies that are out there retrofitting solar systems with battery storage. And because the battery technology has just got significantly better in the last few years, as you know, evidence of all of the electric vehicles and things of that nature. So the battery technology is changing, and people are retrofitting solar systems to make sure that they can keep power when the grid goes down. Now, that's not a cheap proposition. That's still an expensive thing to do, to retrofit a solar system. So I noticed earlier this year that our electricity had become less stable than it had been in the previous 3 years, because we've had way too many scheduled power outages. But they were also coming to update the transmission lines and add new lines and things of that nature. So there's been work in my zone, but the power outages, we've had, 4 or 5 outages, scheduled outages this year, that have been disruptive, right, to my business and also just to my everyday lifestyle. And living in a storm-prone area just makes sense that it was time to update my power backup system. I had been relying on UPS devices, so what they call no breaks here. I've been relying on the smaller UPS systems, which basically will keep your devices running for 30 minutes if the power goes out. And typically that's been good enough in most power outages. If the power just fluctuates or flicks off for 30 or 40 minutes, my internet stays up, my computer stay working. If I'm in the middle of a Zoom meeting, I don't miss any calls, or I don't have to do anything extraordinary to keep going. So that's been good enough for the most part. It's those prolonged power outages that last for more than an hour where things get uncomfortable, literally and figuratively, where you have to now use battery backups like the Anchor backup or some other type of battery system in order to keep going. So in my case, I made a video about this. I'll leave a link to it above and also in the description notes below. But it's now time to improve my battery backup system. I recently acquired a Generac GP3000 gas inverter generator. And I had been looking at generators for a long time. And just to give you some idea of what I found about generators, they are the traditional gas-based generators that generate way more power for like power tools and things of that nature that you see on job sites, construction sites. Those don't produce the cleanest power and aren't the best for electronic devices. However, the Generac GP3000 produces a clean power. And it's also very quiet because it uses inverter technology. That particular generator can produce 2,300 watts of continuous power, and it can spike up to 3,000 watts. There are also these battery power systems for your home that are based solely on batteries. They will take battery power and convert it to AC power so that you can use with regular plugs in your electronics and things of that nature. Those devices are also charged by the wall, or they're charged by solar panels. So that's the other option. Now, in Mexico, at the local stores like a Home Depot, they only carry the small versions of those. So you're talking, 600 watt systems, and those are pretty pricey. They're around $300 to $400 per little small EcoFlow is the one that's carried here at my local Home Depot. But my Generac will do 2,300 watts of continuous power. It has a 1 gallon tank. Gas here in Mexico is around $5.20 per gallon, believe it or not. Even though Mexico produces a lot of oil, gas is also expensive. At an 80% power load, so I can run that generator for about $73 per day. I'll explain what I'm running on this generator, which is a much lower load. I get much longer and it's a much less expensive. I'm running it at about, less than half of what it's capable of doing. So armed with my new Generac GP3000i generator, and there's a 3600i now that's available, I am able to run my fiber modem, my Wi-Fi mesh network, 3 of the access points there, the gigabit switch that runs all of the internal, let's say, internet networking for my house, my refrigerator. I'm also able to run my work computer and monitor, which is a Mac M1 Mini and LG 27-inch monitor, a 65-inch television, so I can pick whichever TV we want to run on that, my GeoINet Slate 7 VPN router. My iPads, iPhones, and laptops can run for hours and hours and hours, just recharge them. I have one of my UPSs, which gives me about 30 minutes of power when I'm refilling and things of that nature. So the total draw for all of those devices is about 1.1 kilowatts per hour, or 1,100 watts per hour. So watts are based on an hour. If you have a 60 watt light bulb, it will use 60 watts in 1 hour. So all of those devices come up to about 1,100 watts per hour. Fuel that I will use for that is about 4 gallons basically. So my daily cost to run all of those devices is $27.56, give or take. So I use AI to calculate all of this, which was a very good use of ChatGPT. There was no guessing, no surprises, just using tech to do what tech does to figure out better systems, right? And the way I did that was I took pictures of all of the labels, and I'll post some of those labels in this video so you can see what that looks like. And AI figured out my total consumption that I would use for all of those things. And I told it which generator I had, and it told me, it came up with a schedule that I'll post for you on when to refill and things of that nature. So I have both a day and a nighttime schedule of the things that are running, because I'm not running, all of my TVs and all those things. I don't need those things running all the time at night. So I can actually reduce the load at night so that the generator keeps running and I don't have to constantly get up and refill it, because again, it only has a 1 gallon tank. Also, in my power system, I run 3 fans for comfort, right? So if we completely lose power, we won't have AC, but we will have 3 fans that are circulating the air. One of the things I will tell you is when trying to pick out a generator, definitely get something that produces clean energy, but also spec for what you need. We tend to think that we need the biggest generator or the biggest battery system, and that's not necessarily the case. Spec it out for exactly what you need in order to keep going for a short amount of time until the grid comes back up. Now, I already have a plan for a phase 2 of my new backup plan, and that's to add a Vitoman 1500 portable power station. Now, these are the battery backups that I was telling you about. They power your house. They charge either through AC or through solar. And this Vitoman 1500 will do 1500 watts of continuous power, which is perfect for my scenario because I'm well under 1500 watts, and it still gives me room for growth. I also can add a second expandable battery to the Vitoman, which is also 1500 watts. So that will double the solution to 3000 watts. So the beauty of that is the Vitoman 1500 is rechargeable by my generator. So I can use the generator to charge my portable battery system when I get it. I don't have it yet. And that makes no noise. It's super quiet. The Generac is actually pretty quiet, but it does produce noise because there's a small engine running. With the portable power station, it doesn't make any noise because there's no generators running inside, just the inverter. So it can do silent overnight power. It will extend my gas because I'm not going to have to run the generator as often, and it gives me the ability of running, you know, for many hours on the battery, turning on the generator, charging the battery, going back and forth. I think that's a perfect scenario. Or I can move the portable battery station to another area and run the generator in an additional area, and it just gives me flexibility. So now, if you want to avoid shocking power bills when moving to Mexico, here are 4 tips for you. Number 1, know what you currently use based on your lifestyle in the States or in Canada. So check your electric bill, figure out how many kilowatts you typically use per month and on a daily basis, based on the things that you use in your current house. So track your usage if you come on an exploratory or scouting trip to the city that you want to live in Mexico. The way you can track that is if you're in an Airbnb, take a picture of the meter when you get there, and then when you leave, take a picture on when you leave. That will at least tell you what you've used for that usage during that time. Now, also includes the things that are inherent to the house, because every house is different. So you'll have to keep that in mind, but it'll tell you how much electricity you used at that particular property while you were there. Tip number 3 is ask for the CFE bill before signing anything when looking at a rental property or even when buying a house. Once you purchase a home, you can change the electric bill to your name, and therefore it's your new account. And if you were on DAC from the previous owner or the previous house, that all goes away. But when you rent, like me, I was a high user at my previous home, and if someone rented my old home and didn't know about splitting the systems or how to use it, they could quickly find themselves in DAC based on my high consumption from the previous home. So you definitely want to know what was being used, how much electricity was being used, and you want a copy of the CFE bill. The CFE bill is super important here in Mexico. In some instances, it acts as your ID. So you having the previous CFE bill before renting and knowing what the electric usage is before renting a home is super important. And number 4, buy inverter appliances, especially AC units and refrigerators. The more you spend a little bit more up front, but you save a lot in the long run when using those units over time. And the 5th one, I'll just toss this out. When you run your ACs, there's no need to run them at 18 degrees Celsius, which is super cold. 24 degrees Celsius, it feels amazing when you're coming in from 105 degrees. And you just want to cool the air and remove the humidity, which is a big part. So knowing your house is super important. Your house might look energy efficient, but I promise you, it's got hidden electricity vampires in the walls. Every house is a little different, from water pumps, pool filters, sprinkler systems, landscape lighting, fountains, pressurizers, all of those things add to your electric bill. If you're not sure how to calculate your usage or what it might be down here in Mexico, or you want a second opinion before committing to a solar backup plan, I've helped a lot of folks figure this out. You can book a quick consultation and we'll make sure that you're not the one paying triple for your electric bill. I'll leave a link to the consultation in the description notes below. If you've been a resident of Mexico for some time, what's your current backup setup and what's been your worst electric bill that you've received? Leave me comments below. I'd love to hear your comments on how you're managing blackouts and the power situation here in Mexico. If you want to know more about how to save on your electricity, check out this older video I did over here. And until next time, Mexit Plans Monty, I'm out.